The galaxy was at war. Not the kind of war fought with mere soldiers and strategy, but an all-consuming, civilization-ending slaughter. Entire planets burned. Empires that had stood for millennia crumbled under the weight of superior technology, ruthless tactics, and the cold efficiency of the Valir Dominion, the most advanced and feared species in the known universe. And now, Earth was next. The Dominion had barely considered humanity a threat at first, a fledgling species, new to the stars, no genetic enhancements, no psychic abilities, no hyper-advanced war doctrines like the older races. Humanity was a joke, a footnote in galactic history, destined to be crushed under the heel of those who had mastered space warfare centuries before they even built their first rocket. But the Valir had made one fatal mistake. They underestimated humans. When Earth received the Dominion's ultimatum, surrender or be annihilated, the response wasn't negotiation. It wasn't even defiance. It was silence. For years, humanity had been working on something. A last hope. A final gamble. The HSS Black Horizon. No one outside Earth's Secret War Council knew the details. No leaks, no spies, no transmissions. The only thing the galaxy knew was that humanity had vanished from the battlefield for a while. They had retreated from the outer colonies. Their fleets had pulled back. Their diplomats stopped responding. And then, the Black Horizon emerged. It arrived in the Dominion-held system of Telvok Prime, the heart of Valir power in the sector. At first, it was dismissed as just another human warship, a futile attempt at resistance. The Dominion's fleet moved in, thousands of ships surrounding it in a perfect sphere, ready to reduce it to atoms. Then physics broke. It started as a shimmer around the Black Horizon's hull, like reality itself was struggling to decide what the ship was. Dominion sensors malfunctioned. Their computers registered the ship as being in 12 locations at once. Weapons locked onto it, only for targeting systems to crash. Entire ships froze in space as their gravity drives flickered out of control. Then, without warning, the Black Horizon moved. Not the standard movement of a ship engaging thrusters or activating a warp drive. No, this was something else. It blinked. One moment it was surrounded, the next it was inside the Dominion formation. A vessel the size of a city, warping through space as if inertia and mass were mere suggestions. The Valir panicked. They opened fire. Beams of plasma, hyper-accelerated railgun slugs, exotic matter torpedoes, everything was thrown at the Black Horizon. It should have been destroyed. There was no way a ship, no matter how advanced, could survive such overwhelming firepower. But the weapons never landed. Reality warped around the Black Horizon like a liquid mirage. Energy beams curved away at impossible angles. Projectiles vanished as if they had never existed. Some shots even reversed direction, slamming into the Dominion fleet that had fired them. And then, it struck back. The Black Horizon didn't use traditional weapons. No turrets, no missiles, no beam arrays. Instead, it reached out. One Dominion battleship, the Kalos 17, vanished. No explosion, no debris. It simply ceased to be. A moment later, another ship was cut in half, but not like a normal slicing motion. It was as if the two halves had been in two separate realities and suddenly collided, shearing metal and flesh into an unrecognizable mess. The Valir admiral, Vakor, watched in horror from his command ship. He was no stranger to war, had conquered dozens of planets, seen every kind of weapon imaginable. But this was not a weapon. This was an abomination. "Retreat!" he roared, his voice shaking. "All ships, retreat now!" It was too late. The Black Horizon moved again, phasing in and out of existence, ignoring the laws of motion. Valir ships began disappearing faster than their sensors could track. Others suffered stranger fates. Some were frozen in time, their crews locked in an endless moment of terror. Others turned inside out, their hulls and living beings reversed into impossible configurations. And then, just as quickly as it had arrived, the Black Horizon was gone. The battle was over. The Dominion fleet had been reduced to scattered survivors, if you could call what remained survivors. Some of the ships had no crews left at all, their personnel simply erased from existence. Others had aged thousands of years in seconds, their hulls crumbling into dust. Admiral Vakor sat in stunned silence, watching the wreckage drift in the void. Humanity had done the impossible. They had built something that should not exist, a ship that defied reality itself. And the galaxy was about to learn just how terrifying humans could be. The Valir Dominion had ruled the stars for thousands of years. They had fought wars, crushed rebellions, and seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They were the dominant force in the galaxy. But for the first time in their history, they knew fear. Word of the battle at Telvok Prime spread like wildfire. Dominion commanders tried to suppress the reports, but surviving captains whispered the truth to their crews. A human warship had erased an entire armada with no known weaponry. It had moved like no ship should. It had warped physics. It had made their technology obsolete in an instant. And it wasn't alone. Intelligence reports from deep inside human territory suggested that the Black Horizon was only the first of its kind. The humans had disappeared from the galactic stage for years. What if they had built a fleet? What if they were preparing an invasion with warships that ignored the laws of the universe? Admiral Vakor, now a disgraced survivor of the massacre, stood before the Valir High Council in their grand chamber on Orvax 9. The towering figures of the Dominion's rulers loomed over him, their glowing eyes filled with fury and disbelief. "You expect us to believe," one of the counselors growled, "that a primitive species has built a warship that bends time and space?" "They are not primitive," Vakor replied, his voice hoarse. He hadn't slept in days. "They were hiding something from us, something impossible, something we cannot fight." Another counselor hissed. "No technology is beyond understanding. This Black Horizon is just an advanced warship. Perhaps they discovered a new cloaking system, or some kind of dimensional phase weapon." Vakor slammed a fist against the table. "Did you even read the reports? Ships did not explode, they vanished. Others had their entire crews erased while the hull remained intact. Some aged into dust in seconds. This is not a new weapon. This is something else." Silence filled the chamber. Finally, the High Warlord of the Dominion, a being older than any of them, spoke. His voice was low, calm, but carried the weight of absolute authority. "If what you say is true, then humanity has become a threat unlike any we have faced before." His glowing golden eyes narrowed. "And threats must be eliminated." Vakor felt the pit in his stomach grow. "You can't fight this, Warlord. We don't even understand what we're up against." The Warlord leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Then we will learn." Meanwhile, deep in human space, aboard the HSS Black Horizon, Captain Dante Raines stood on the bridge, staring at the holographic display of the carnage they had left behind. Dominion ships reduced to wreckage, warships erased from time. The most powerful fleet in the sector, annihilated in minutes, and the Black Horizon had barely tried. "Status report," he ordered, his voice calm despite the implications of what they had just done. Lieutenant Emma Voss, the ship's chief tactical officer, tapped a few controls. "All systems normal. No structural damage. No energy depletion." Dante exhaled slowly. That was the terrifying part. The Black Horizon hadn't even strained itself in that battle. It had moved like a predator toying with prey. He turned to Dr. Elias Kern, the man responsible for designing this impossible ship. I assume you have an explanation for why our weapons don't behave like, weapons. Kern smirked, adjusting his glasses. Because they aren't. The Black Horizon doesn't fire missiles or energy beams like a normal warship. It manipulates reality itself. Explain. The scientist's eyes gleamed with excitement. The ship's core isn't powered by conventional physics. It's an artificial singularity, a controlled black hole. But not just any black hole. We engineered it using principles we don't fully understand yet. He leaned in, voice dropping lower. We found something buried beneath Europa's ice, an anomaly, a thing that shouldn't exist, and we built the Black Horizon around it. Dante felt a chill run down his spine. Are you telling me this ship isn't human technology? Oh, we built the ship, Kern said. But the power source? That's something else, something older. Dante stared out at the void beyond the bridge windows. A war was coming. The Velir Dominion wouldn't let this go. They would come with everything they had. But for the first time in human history, it didn't matter. Because humanity had something no one else did. A weapon that shouldn't exist. A warship that conquered the stars. And this was only the beginning. The Velir Dominion did not hesitate. Within hours of the Black Horizon's attack on Telvok Prime, the High Warlord had declared humanity an existential threat. All treaties were void. Diplomacy was dead. The order was simple: exterminate them. The Dominion's military machine moved with terrifying efficiency. Fleet after fleet was mobilized. Hundreds of warships, planetary assault divisions, and even their dreaded Sunbreaker-class dreadnoughts, capable of glassing entire worlds, were set on a direct course for Sul. This was not a war anymore. It was an execution. But humanity was ready. Captain Dante Raines stood in the dim glow of the bridge, eyes locked on the incoming threat. The largest fleet ever assembled was headed for Earth. The Dominion wanted them gone. Every last one of them. Good. Let them come. Status? He asked, his voice calm despite the storm on the horizon. Lieutenant Emma Voss pulled up the tactical display. Over 4,000 enemy vessels, battlecruisers, carriers, siege platforms, more than the combined strength of every human fleet in existence. Against them, one ship. And yet, Dante didn't flinch, because the Black Horizon was not a normal warship. Dr. Kern, he said, turning toward the scientist who had designed this monster. You said this ship doesn't operate on conventional technology. Tell me, just how powerful is it? Kern smirked. You saw what happened at Telvok Prime. That was a single battle. We've barely scratched the surface of what this thing can do. Dante nodded. Good, because we're about to face the full force of the Dominion. Kern's expression turned serious. Then it's time we show them why physics doesn't apply to us anymore. The Dominion fleet arrived in Sol space, weapons primed, expecting resistance. They found silence. No human warships, no defenses, not even planetary shields active. It was a trap. A shimmering ripple in space appeared near Jupiter, a tear in reality itself. And then, the Black Horizon emerged. The Dominion fleet opened fire immediately. Thousands of plasma lances, railgun slugs, and fusion torpedoes screamed towards the ship. Enough firepower to obliterate a planet. And yet, the Black Horizon didn't move. Instead, the laws of physics broke. Energy beams bent backward, slamming into the Dominion's own fleet. Some torpedoes stopped in mid-air, frozen in time, before reversing course and hitting their launchers. Some ships simply disappeared, erased from existence like they had never been there. Panic spread. "What is this?" a Valir commander screamed over the comms. Admiral Vakor watched in horror from his flagship. "It's not a ship," he whispered. "It's a nightmare." And then, the Black Horizon attacked. It didn't fire weapons. It didn't launch fighters. It tore open reality. Gaps in space appeared, holes to nowhere. Dominion ships were pulled in, vanishing into infinite blackness, never to be seen again. Others aged thousands of years in seconds, their hulls crumbling to dust. Some were trapped in time loops, reliving their deaths over and over again. The Dominion fleet, the most powerful force in the galaxy, was being dismantled like a child's toy. Vakor turned to his bridge crew, his mind racing. There was only one option left. "Retreat!" he bellowed. "All ships, retreat now!" But before they could even run, the Black Horizon moved, not through space, not with thrusters. It blinked, one moment distant, the next right in the middle of the Dominion fleet. Then everything collapsed. For the first time in recorded history, an entire armada was wiped out in less than an hour. And the Black Horizon was untouched. The Dominion was broken. The war was over before it even began. Entire sectors of Valir space declared independence, terrified of what humanity had unleashed. The once invincible empire fractured overnight. And the Black Horizon? It vanished. Not back to Earth, not to any known human colony. It simply left. No one knew where. Some say it had become more than a ship, something beyond human understanding. A ghost in the void, waiting for the next empire foolish enough to challenge humanity. Because if there was one lesson the galaxy had learned that day, it was this: you don't break the laws of physics, unless you want something worse to break you. The Valir Dominion was in freefall. Once the undisputed rulers of the stars, they had been reduced to shattered remnants, their fleets annihilated, their leadership in disarray. The devastation caused by the Black Horizon wasn't just a military loss. It was a psychological wound, a horror they couldn't explain. Entire fleets gone in moments, ships erased from time, weapons turned against their own creators. This wasn't war, this was a warning, and the rest of the galaxy had received it loud and clear. The Grand Coalition, a union of powerful alien civilizations who had once dismissed humanity as primitive, now scrambled to understand what had happened. Were the humans still the same desperate survivors who had barely scratched their way into space? Or had they become something else? Something unnatural? The Black Horizon had vanished after the battle. No transmissions, no sensor readings, nothing. The last known location of the ship had been near Neptune's orbit, where it had blinked out of existence. Some speculated that it had returned to Earth's hidden shipyards, rearming itself for another impossible war. Others believed it had entered some other plane of reality, existing outside of time and space itself. One thing was certain: if the Black Horizon returned, it wouldn't just be the Valir Dominion that suffered. It would be everyone. Admiral Vakor stood before what remained of the Valir High Council. Their empire was burning, their fleets obliterated. And yet, the rulers of the Dominion still refused to accept the truth. "We must strike back," one of the counselors hissed. "Find the humans and wipe them out." Vakor clenched his fists. They still didn't understand. "We can't fight this," he growled. "You saw what happened. Our weapons were useless. Our defenses meant nothing. The Black Horizon is not a ship. It is something else. If we push them further, we won't just lose this war." He glared at them. "We will cease to exist." Another counselor, older and more cautious, leaned forward. "Then what do you suggest?" Vakor exhaled. There was only one option left. "We surrender." The chamber fell silent. One of the younger warlords snarled, baring his fangs. "Never." "You don't understand," Vakor snapped. We have already lost. The only reason we are still standing is because humanity has allowed us to." Another silence, this time heavier. The Valir were conquerors. They had never surrendered in their history. They had never been afraid. Until now. Finally, the High Warlord himself spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "What, have we awakened?" No one had an answer. Dr. Elias Kern had seen many impossible things in his career. He had spent his life chasing the limits of science, breaking barriers no one thought could be broken. But even he had no idea what they had built. The Black Horizon was never meant to work. Humanity had designed it with the best technology they had. But somewhere along the way, something else had taken over. Something old. Something that shouldn't exist. As he stood in the frozen depths of the Kuiper Belt, watching the hidden lab's instruments scan for traces of the Black Horizon, he felt a chill run down his spine. The ship hadn't just vanished. It had left this reality. The only question was, would it return? And if it did, would it still be under human control? The Black Horizon was gone. Not destroyed. Not hidden. Gone. Every human sensor array, every deep space probe, every classified black site telescope in the Sol system had tried to track its last known coordinates. Nothing. It was as if the ship had simply ceased to exist. But something was still out there. Strange gravitational anomalies rippled across the outer edges of the system. Temporal distortions, small but measurable, appeared near Saturn's orbit. The quantum foam in the vacuum of space was different. And deep in the Kuiper Belt, Dr. Elias Kern was staring at a signal, a single pulse on his instruments, a signature that defied all known physics. It wasn't a distress call. It wasn't a transmission. It was more like a whisper from something outside reality. His heart pounded as he traced the data, running simulation after simulation. The pulse had come from beyond the observable universe, beyond time itself. The Black Horizon hadn't been destroyed. It had ascended. In the weeks following the Battle of Sol, the galactic balance of power had shifted overnight. The Valir Dominion was fractured. Some of their warlords had fled into exile, taking what remained of their fleets to distant, uncharted systems. Others had begged for peace, sending emissaries to humanity with desperate offers of truce. For the first time in history, the galaxy feared humanity. And for good reason. The Black Horizon had been just one ship. If humans could build another, if they had mastered the impossible, no empire would ever be safe again. Admiral Vakor stood in the observation deck of his ruined battleship, now nothing more than a drifting husk fleeing from a war he had once commanded. Once, he had been the Dominion's greatest admiral. Now he was a disgraced fugitive. He had watched his fleet, his people, be erased from existence by something that should not exist. And yet here he was, alive, while others had simply vanished. "Sir," one of his surviving officers said cautiously, "what do we do now?" Vakor's jaw tightened. The High Warlord had refused to listen. The Council had underestimated the humans. And now, the Dominion was gone. But Vakor was not. "We learn," he said coldly. "We find out what the humans have created." His eyes burned with determination. "And if we can't defeat it," he exhaled, "we join it." Captain Dante Raines had seen victory before. But this was different. The Black Horizon had destroyed an entire armada. It had vanished into the unknown. And now, the galaxy was on its knees. Humanity had gone from a minor species to a galactic superpower in the span of one battle. And yet, something didn't sit right. "We don't know where it went," Dante muttered, staring at the holo display of the missing ship. "It didn't warp. It didn't jump. It just disappeared." Dr. Elias Kern stood beside him, arms crossed. Because it's no longer in our universe. Dante turned sharply. What the hell does that mean? Kern sighed. We built the Black Horizon with physics we barely understood. We manipulated gravity fields, time distortions, quantum singularities. He hesitated. But I don't think we were ever in control of it. Dante's stomach turned. Then who was? Kern hesitated before answering. I don't know. Silence. Then a beeping sound filled the room. A proximity alert. Dante's eyes snapped to the console. What the? Kern paled. It was the same signal he had detected in the Kuiper Belt. A whisper from beyond reality. And it was getting closer. The signal pulsed again. A deep, unnatural frequency that defied all logic. It wasn't a distress call. It wasn't even a transmission. It was a presence. Captain Dante Raines felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him as he stared at the pulsating signal on the holo display. Across the control room, Dr. Elias Kern was frozen, his mind racing through theories that had no sane conclusions. Then, the alarms screamed. Unknown object detected, the AI intoned, its normally calm voice laced with urgency. Anomalous energy signature approaching Earth orbit. The room erupted into chaos. Officers scrambled for data, hands flying across control panels, barking orders into comms. Dante's heart pounded. Was it the Black Horizon? Visuals now, he barked. The main screen flickered, then snapped to a live feed from Earth's orbital defense grid. And there it was, a tear in reality itself. A gaping wound in space, writhing like something alive, leaking tendrils of pure darkness. The laws of physics around it twisted and warped. Stars behind the rift seemed to shift, bending and distorting as if they were being dragged into something beyond comprehension. Dante gritted his teeth. Kern, what the hell am I looking at? Kern's face was pale. That's not a wormhole, he whispered. It's something worse. The rift shuddered. Then a shadow began to emerge. A structure, a shape, a ship. But not just any ship. The HSS Black Horizon. It was different now. Larger, darker. No longer just a warship, but something more. Its hull shimmered with a strange, unrecognizable material, almost as if reality itself was struggling to render its existence. Its silhouette pulsed, shifting between forms, as if it no longer obeyed the concept of a fixed shape. The bridge fell into dead silence. Then, the comms crackled to life, and a voice, distorted, layered, almost inhuman, spoke. We have seen beyond the veil. Dante's blood ran cold. That voice, he recognized it. It was his own. Impossible, Kern whispered, his mind refusing to process what they were hearing, but the voice continued. Time is a river. We are no longer bound by its current. Dante felt his fingers clench into fists. Who are you? He demanded, forcing his voice to stay steady. What happened to the Black Horizon? Silence. Then, the ship moved. Not through propulsion. Not through any known form of travel. One moment it was distant, hanging in orbit above the moon. The next, it was right outside. The Earth's defense grid crashed instantly. Satellites malfunctioned, their circuits frying as if something far beyond technology had overridden them. The entire planet's gravity field shifted, subtly but noticeably, as if reality itself had bent in the presence of this impossible vessel. Kern swallowed hard. Dante, he said slowly, that's not just a ship anymore. Dante exhaled. Then what the hell is it? Kern's gaze was locked onto the impossible mass before them. It's becoming something else. And that's when they heard it. A whisper. Faint at first, like a distant echo in their minds, then stronger, not words, not language, a presence. Something was watching them, something that had been beyond the edges of existence itself. And now, it had come home. Admiral Vakor sat in the ruined command bridge of his last remaining warship, drifting in deep space. His once proud Valir dominion was gone, and now he felt it too, a whisper in his mind, a presence. Something had returned to the galaxy, something that was never meant to exist. And this time, it wasn't just humanity's problem anymore. The HSS Black Horizon floated above Earth, silent and still. But something had changed. It wasn't just a ship anymore. It wasn't even human anymore. It had seen something beyond existence, and it had brought something back. Dante Raines felt it deep in his bones, a pressure, an unseen force, something primal pressing against the edges of his mind. It wasn't just him. Every officer in the command center was holding their breath, their hands trembling over their consoles, though none of them could explain why. The comms remained open, and the voice, his voice but not his voice, spoke again. "We are no longer bound by time." Dante clenched his fists. "What does that mean?" No response. Dr. Elias Kern was furiously typing on his console, sweat dripping down his forehead. "I'm running a scan, but—" He stopped, blinked, stared. Dante frowned. "What?" Kern slowly turned to him. His voice was barely above a whisper. "This ship, the Black Horizon, it's not in a fixed state." He swallowed hard. "It's in multiple points in time at once." Dante's blood ran cold. "What?" Kern looked sick. "I'm reading quantum signatures that don't make sense. It's here, but also yesterday, and next week. It exists in a loop we can't perceive." His eyes darted back to the readings. "It's outside of normal time." Dante exhaled. "Then who the hell is flying it?" Before Kern could answer, the Black Horizon moved. It blinked, vanishing and reappearing instantly, this time hovering directly above Earth's atmosphere. No thrusters, no warp signatures, just movement that defied every known law of physics. Then, the whispers grew louder, not just in Dante's head, across the entire planet. It started with a low, almost imperceptible hum. Then a ripple of something unseen washed over Earth. People collapsed in the streets. Soldiers dropped their weapons, clutching their heads. Civilians screamed. Scientists in deep space observatories froze in horror as instruments glitched and showed impossible readings. Something was speaking, not in words, not in language, in understanding. It poured into their minds like a flood. Knowledge that didn't belong, visions of things that had never happened, yet felt real. A man in New York fell to his knees, whispering in an ancient tongue he had never learned. A child in Tokyo screamed as she saw herself standing on an alien world that did not exist. A soldier on the Lunar Defense Station dropped his rifle as his own reflection spoke to him from the polished glass. Time was unraveling, and the Black Horizon was at the center of it. Dante gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stay grounded as the whispers clawed at his mind. The room was spinning. His breath felt heavy, and then he saw it. A flash. Not of the past, not of the future, but of something beyond. A place that had no name, a void of shifting shapes and impossible colors, a reality that should not be, and in that place, the Black Horizon floated, surrounded by things that watched, things that were waiting. His heart nearly stopped, because at the center of it all, he saw himself. Not here, not now, but different versions of himself, infinite versions, standing in that impossible void. Some older, some younger, some with scars he didn't remember receiving. And all of them were staring right at him. The Black Horizon wasn't just moving through space. It wasn't just traveling through time. It was shifting through realities. And it had brought something back, something that wasn't supposed to be here, something that was waking up. Admiral Vakor stood aboard his refugee ship, staring at the transmission coming from the humans' homeworld. He didn't understand half of what was happening, but he understood one thing. The humans had done something no species had ever dared. They had broken time. And now, the entire galaxy was about to pay the price. The voice from the Black Horizon spoke one last time, and this time, the entire world heard it. We have seen beyond the veil. We have touched what was never meant to be touched. And now, it is awake. Then, the sky split open, and reality itself screamed. The sky above Earth split apart, not like a storm, not like an explosion, like a wound. A vast, shifting rupture tore through the upper atmosphere, spreading like cracks in glass. Beyond it? Nothing. Not space, not stars, just an infinite swirling void where time and physics had no meaning, and from that void, something was coming through. Dante Raines staggered back, his vision warping as the Black Horizon pulsed in synchronization with the rift. His earpiece crackled with panicked voices, military commanders, scientists, world leaders, all screaming at once. "What is that? We're losing planetary stability. Sir, something's inside the breach." Dr. Elias Kern was furiously typing on his console, but it was pointless. His calculations, his models, his understanding of physics, none of it applied anymore. Dante's pulse thundered in his ears. Then, the Black Horizon spoke one last time. "We have become more." A shudder ran through the planet. The ocean levels shifted, mountains trembled, and the thing in the void finally stepped through. There was no shape to it, no form that made sense. At times it looked mechanical, a vast warship of endless depth. At others it seemed organic, a shifting mass of eyes, limbs, and tendrils that flickered between dimensions. And yet, it was watching. Humanity had built the Black Horizon. They had unlocked something they never should have touched. And now, they had been noticed. Dante couldn't breathe. His mind filled with whispers, overlapping voices in 1,000 languages, speaking of things no human should ever comprehend. Memories that weren't his. Lifetimes in other universes. And in each of those lifetimes, he saw one common truth. This had happened before, and it had never ended well. Across the galaxy, empires trembled. The Valir Dominion, already fractured, fell into total collapse. Other species, once indifferent to humanity, now watched with terror. Because they understood one thing. The humans had broken the universe, and whatever had stepped through that rift was no longer human at all. As the world shook, Dante Raines clenched his fists. He had led the Black Horizon into war. He had commanded the ship that defied the laws of reality. And now, he was standing at the edge of something far greater than war. A new existence. One where time, space, and reality itself no longer mattered. And in that moment, he understood. The Black Horizon had never been a weapon. It had been a doorway. And humanity had just stepped through. "This is Captain Dante Raines of the HSS Black Horizon. I don't know if anyone is still out there. I don't know if this message will even reach another reality. But if it does, if anyone is listening, we didn't mean to break the laws of physics. We just wanted to survive. But now we are something else. And we are not alone. Be ready, because the Black Horizon has seen the truth. And the truth is terrifying." The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the quiet murmur of 1,000 alien voices, each representing one of the many species that formed the United Galactic Federation. Towering insectoids, gelatinous beings in containment suits, reptilian warlords, and countless others filled the Grand Hall. And standing before them, on a raised platform at the very center, was Ambassador Jason Reed, the last human voice in the council. He stood tall, though tension lined his face. The weight of his species' fate pressed heavily upon him. Across from him, Grand Arbiter Zelthoran, a being of the Ziffer Dominion with an elongated skull and shimmering emerald skin, raised a clawed hand. Silence fell upon the chamber. "Ambassador Reed," Zelthoran's voice echoed, laced with disdain. "The Council has deliberated. The vote is unanimous. Humanity is hereby expelled from the United Galactic Federation, effective immediately." A collective murmur swept through the chamber, some species showing satisfaction, others maintaining a neutral stance. Jason, however, remained unfazed. He had expected this. "This is a mistake," Jason said, his voice firm but measured. "You fear us because we refuse to kneel. You call us reckless because we fight for our own interests. But tell me, which one of you has never placed their own kind first?" Zelthoran's nostrils flared. "Your kind disrupts the balance. Humans refuse to adhere to our treaties, to our hierarchy. You lack the wisdom of older races and yet demand a seat at the table." Jason smirked. "Because we refuse to let stagnant, decaying civilizations dictate our future?" He scanned the room. "You preach peace, yet half the species here still wage wars in the dark. You say we're too young, yet we've done in 3 centuries what many of you haven't in millennia." A murmur of discontent rippled through the chamber. Some species nodded subtly, but none dared speak in defense of humanity. It was a lost cause. The decision had been made. Zelthoran struck the podium with his staff. "Enough. You may leave with what little dignity your kind still has." Jason inhaled sharply and nodded. "Fine. You don't want us? You won't have us. But you will regret this." He turned, his boots echoing against the pristine floor as he exited. The humans in attendance followed, silent but seething. Outside the chamber, General Amanda Vasquez, clad in her Earth Defense Fleet uniform, was already waiting with a knowing look. "They actually did it," she muttered. Jason sighed. "Yeah, they did." She crossed her arms. "So what now?" Jason's smirk returned, but this time it held something different: determination. "Now? We rewrite the rules." Humanity wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The moment humanity was expelled from the Galactic Council, the wheels of change began turning. Back on Earth, the announcement was met with fury. News broadcasts ran footage of Jason Reed's final stand in the council chamber, replaying his words again and again. Protests erupted across human colonies, not against their leaders, but against the aliens who had cast them aside. The people didn't see this as a loss. They saw it as a declaration of war, one that had yet to be fought. At the Terran High Command on Luna, the most powerful leaders of humanity gathered. Generals, scientists, diplomats, and corporate heads filled the war room. A massive holographic display in the center showed the galactic map, marking every known trade route, resource hub, and strategic location. Jason Reed stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, his face set in stone. "They think they've won by kicking us out," he said, voice calm but cutting. "But we are no longer bound by their rules, their treaties, or their restrictions. They've just given us the one thing we've always thrived on." Admiral Vasquez smirked. "Freedom." "Exactly." Jason pointed at the map. "For years we've played by their laws, paid their taxes, traded under their tariffs, submitted to their ridiculous regulations. But now we set our own terms." Dr. Elias Carter, head of the Terran Research Division, leaned forward. "Are you saying we should break their technology embargo?" Jason met his gaze. "Not just break it, shatter it." There was a heavy pause before Vasquez grinned. "I like where this is going." For centuries, humanity had been artificially held back. The Council controlled what technology could be developed, what weapons could be built, what ships could be flown beyond designated territories. It was a system designed to keep them under control, to ensure no young race could rise too quickly. But now, with their expulsion, the floodgates had opened. "We don't have their numbers," Vasquez admitted, "but we don't need them. We have adaptability. We innovate faster than any species in the known galaxy." Jason nodded. "And we're about to prove it." Within weeks, Earth's shipyards shifted into overdrive. The next-generation warships, previously held back by bureaucratic red tape, were greenlit for mass production. AI research, once tightly monitored by the Council, advanced at an exponential rate. Experimental weapons that had been locked away due to ethical concerns were finally being tested. Meanwhile, human corporations saw an opportunity of their own. With the Council's restrictions gone, Terran companies expanded aggressively into regions where alien businesses had once dominated. Human privateers, once labeled as mere traders, became something else entirely. Armed merchant fleets secured trade routes, offering protection for a price. It didn't take long for the rest of the galaxy to notice. The first real confrontation came when the Zephyr Dominion attempted to seize a former Terran colony, believing humanity to be too weak to defend it. They were wrong. The new Terran fleet arrived in force, equipped with weapons the Dominion had never seen before. Their ships were faster, their tactics unpredictable, their AI-driven targeting systems flawless. The battle lasted less than an hour. When the dust settled, the Dominion had lost an entire fleet. Humanity had lost a single ship. The message was clear. The Council had thrown humanity out. Now humanity would show them why that was their greatest mistake. The defeat of the Zephyr Dominion fleet sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time in history, a younger species had not only defied an elder race, but utterly humiliated them in battle. The Council tried to downplay the loss, calling it an unfortunate misunderstanding, but behind closed doors, they were panicking. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity was just getting started. Jason Reed stood on the observation deck of the Olympus shipyards, watching as the first of the new Dreadnought-class warships was completed. The HSS Vengeance floated in the void like a sleeping giant, its sleek black hull bristling with weaponry the Council had long deemed too dangerous for developing species. Admiral Vasquez joined him, a datapad in her hand. "We've just finished retrofitting the first batch of ships. AI-assisted targeting, electromagnetic shielding, next-gen railguns. We're years ahead of what the Council allows their own fleets to use." Jason smirked. "Good, because they're about to come knocking." The Council had underestimated humanity for too long. They had treated them as an upstart species, a minor inconvenience to be dismissed. But now they had no choice but to take Earth seriously. And just as Jason predicted, the Council's response came swiftly. A delegation arrived in Sol space, led by none other than Grand Arbiter Zelthoran himself. The massive Council flagship, Eminence, dwarfed the human escort ships as it took position in high orbit over Earth. Jason and Vasquez took a shuttle up to the Eminence, meeting the delegation in the Council's signature grand, opulent halls. Zelthoran stood at the head of the room, his emerald-green eyes filled with barely concealed contempt. "You have gone too far, Ambassador Reed." Jason chuckled, crossing his arms. "You threw us out, Arbiter. Did you think we'd just roll over and die?" the Zephyr leader hissed. "You have violated interstellar law. You have developed weapons forbidden to lesser species. You have conducted unauthorized military actions against a member race of the Council." Vasquez stepped forward, her voice cold. "We defended our people, something you failed to do when you let the Dominion attack us." The Council members murmured among themselves, clearly unprepared for this level of defiance. For centuries, younger species had always bowed to the Council's authority. But humanity? Humanity had evolved in war. They had survived through resilience. They didn't back down. Zelthorin's voice turned sharper. You must cease your militarization immediately and submit to Council oversight, or face consequences. Jason's smirk widened. Or what? The Arbiter's expression darkened. The Council will impose sanctions. We will cut your trade, isolate your species, and if necessary, we will enforce compliance. Vasquez scoffed. You're threatening us with war? No, Zelthorin said coldly. I am offering you a chance to avoid one. Jason exhaled slowly. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every alien present. They thought they still had power over humanity. They thought their threats carried weight. They were wrong. Jason took a step forward. You don't get it, do you? His voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber. We don't need your trade. We don't need your protection. And we sure as hell don't need your permission. Zelthorin's jaw clenched. You are making a mistake. Jason shook his head. Number you made the mistake. His voice hardened. You thought throwing us out would weaken us, that we would beg to be let back in, that we would fall in line like every species before us. But that's not how humanity works. He turned, starting for the exit. Before leaving, he glanced over his shoulder. You wanted us out? Fine. But from now on, humanity answers to no one. With that, Jason and Vasquez left the council chambers, leaving behind a room filled with stunned silence. Back on Earth, the declaration was made official. Humanity was no longer a part of the United Galactic Federation. They were something new, independent, unrestricted. And for the first time in history, an outsider species would no longer follow galactic law. They would write it. The Council's delegation returned to their homeworlds with grim expressions, their threats having fallen on deaf ears. Humanity had made its stance clear. They would not be governed, they would not be restrained, and they would certainly not bow. The response from the galactic community was immediate and divided. Some elder species, like the Zephyr Dominion, clamored for war, demanding swift and brutal retaliation to correct humanity's defiance. Others, however, saw something different. Opportunity. Within weeks of the Council's failed ultimatum, new communications flooded into Terran High Command. Species that had long suffered under the bureaucratic stranglehold of the United Galactic Federation reached out, offering to establish trade and military alliances with humanity. They had seen Earth's rapid technological advancements, their unpredictable and devastating military strategies, and, more importantly, their refusal to be controlled. To these species, humanity was no longer just a rebellious upstart. They were an inspiration. Jason Reed stood in the command center of the newly established Terran Sovereignty Headquarters, scanning through the incoming messages. Vasquez stood beside him, reading over a report on recent fleet movements. You're not gonna believe this, she muttered, handing him a datapad. Jason skimmed through the file, his brows raising slightly. The Zorvath clans, a nomadic warrior species that had fought the Council for centuries, had just declared their formal support for humanity. They weren't alone. Over a dozen smaller species, from independent merchant guilds to disenfranchised border worlds, had begun aligning themselves with Earth. Jason smirked. Well, looks like we're not the only ones tired of the Council's bullshit. Vasquez chuckled. And the best part? The Council can't do a damn thing about it. Without the legal bindings of the Federation, humanity had become something dangerous, an unregulated, fast-moving powerhouse that no longer played by the rules. Meanwhile, deep in the Zephyr Dominion, Grand Arbiter Zelthorin stood before a gathering of warlords, his frustration boiling over. Humanity has gone too far, he snarled, slamming his clawed hand against the table. They have corrupted lesser species, expanded beyond their means, and now openly challenge our authority. One of the Dominion's admirals, a scarred reptilian brute, growled in response. Then we do what should have been done long ago. We crush them. Zelthorin exhaled, composing himself. Yes, but not yet. His emerald eyes gleamed with calculation. Humanity fights like a cornered beast. We have seen what happens when they are underestimated. The warlords nodded grimly. The disastrous loss of an entire Dominion fleet had been a harsh lesson. We will not make the same mistake. Zelthorin's voice was cold. We will strike not with brute force, but with precision. We will divide them, break their alliances, bleed them slowly, and when the time is right... His lips curled into something that might have been a smile. We will erase them from history. Back on Earth, humanity was preparing for the inevitable. War was coming, and this time, they would not be caught unprepared. Jason stood in the war room, staring at the galactic map. His people had accomplished in months what others had failed to do in centuries. They had disrupted the balance of power, challenged the old empires, and shattered the illusion of council supremacy. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The galaxy wasn't ready for what was coming next. Because now, humanity wasn't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win. The war didn't begin with a grand invasion. There was no declaration, no formal battle lines drawn. Instead, it started in the shadows. First, human trade convoys began vanishing without a trace. Merchant ships, once escorted by lightly armed patrol craft, were ambushed in deep space. Sensor records showed nothing, just ships disappearing mid-transit. Then came the sabotage. Supply depots on distant colonies erupted in flames. Data networks crashed, infrastructure failed, and entire communication grids went dark. Someone was testing them, probing their weaknesses. Jason Reed watched the reports pile up on his terminal. They're trying to bleed us dry before the real war even starts. Admiral Vasquez nodded grimly. Zelthorin isn't an idiot. He knows that if we fight head-on, we'll punch above our weight, so he's playing dirty. Jason exhaled, rubbing his temples. Good. Vasquez frowned. Good? Jason met her eyes, a cold smirk playing on his lips. It means they're scared. Across the stars, humanity's enemies lurked in the darkness, thinking they were clever. What they didn't understand was that humans thrived in the shadows. They had built entire industries around cyber warfare, black ops, and unconventional tactics. If the Dominion wanted to play that game, humanity would beat them at it. The first move came from the Ghost Division, an elite human intelligence network operating outside conventional military command. They tracked the missing convoys to a secret Dominion refueling station hidden in the nebula of Y-374. A squadron of human stealth ships, equipped with advanced cloaking technology, slipped into the nebula undetected. What followed wasn't a battle, it was a massacre. Human operatives hacked into the station's systems, triggering internal explosions before the enemy even knew they were under attack. Not a single Dominion ship escaped, but humanity didn't stop there. Sabotage teams infiltrated Dominion shipyards, planting viral AI codes that disrupted entire production lines. Advanced human AI, no longer restricted by council laws, launched relentless cyber attacks against Dominion war networks. Black Ops teams tracked down enemy spies, eliminating them with ruthless precision. For every human ship lost, 5 Dominion assets burned. Zelthorin's frustration grew. He had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt. The war of attrition was no longer in his favor. If he wanted to break humanity, he had only one choice: full-scale war. And that was exactly what Jason Reed had been waiting for. On Earth, the final piece of humanity's defense was completed: the Revenant Protocol, a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The moment the Dominion committed to open war, They would face not just humanity's military, but an unstoppable force of AI-driven warships, cybernetic-enhanced soldiers, and weapons so advanced that the Council had once forbidden them from even being researched. Humanity had been shackled for too long. Now they were unleashed, and for the first time in history, the galaxy would learn what it truly meant to fear humans. The Dominion struck with overwhelming force. Hundreds of warships emerged from hyperspace in a coordinated assault across human space. Zephyr dreadnoughts, massive city-sized vessels bristling with weapons, led the charge. Swarms of Dominion fighters filled the void, their sleek black hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. Plasma beams lanced through the darkness, cutting through human orbital defenses like paper. It was the largest military operation in the history of the Galactic Federation, and it was doomed from the start. Jason Reed stood in the war room of the Terran Sovereignty headquarters, watching as the enemy fleet advanced. Around him, high-ranking military officials and AI strategists analyzed incoming data in real time. Admiral Vasquez smirked. "Right on schedule." Jason nodded. "They think they're attacking us." He turned to the holographic display. "But we've been waiting for them." The moment the Dominion ships crossed into human territory, the Revenant Protocol was activated. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Dominion's admirals, watching their fleets carve a path through human colonies, believed victory was within reach. But then, reports started coming in. Ships lost navigation. Their targeting systems glitched. Entire battle groups went silent, their systems crashing without explanation. That's when the first human counterattack struck. In the shadow of a dying star, an unmanned Terran battleship, controlled entirely by AII, emerged from behind an asteroid belt and opened fire. Its railguns, powered by experimental magnetic acceleration, tore through Dominion hulls like they were made of paper. The enemy barely had time to react before another ship decloaked, then another, then hundreds. The humans had learned from their enemies. They had studied their tactics, their strategies. Now they were using them against them. Dominion admirals panicked as the tide turned. Human fleets, moving in unpredictable AI-coordinated patterns, outmaneuvered their forces at every turn. Dominion ships found themselves surrounded, their escape routes cut off. And then came the final blow. Cybernetic warfare. The AI viruses that humanity had developed, no longer restricted by Council laws, unleashed themselves upon Dominion networks. The enemy's own ships turned against them, firing on their allies. Dreadnoughts powered down mid-battle, their crews locked out of control systems. The war had lasted only a day. By the time the Dominion fleet realized what had happened, it was already too late. Zelthorin, watching from the bridge of his flagship, felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Humanity had rewritten the rules of war, and now, for the first time in history, the galaxy would bow to them. Zelthorin gripped the edges of his command console, his emerald eyes scanning the chaotic battlefield. The once proud Dominion fleet was in ruins. His dreadnought, the Veil of Conquest, stood as one of the last remaining warships still under his control. The rest had either been destroyed, disabled, or worse, turned against him. This is impossible," one of his bridge officers muttered, their scaled fingers shaking over the control panel. "They were nothing, a lesser species. How?" Zelthorin's jaw tightened. He had underestimated humanity. They all had. The Council had thought of them as reckless, as a species that needed to be guided. But the moment they had been freed from the Council's restrictions, they had evolved. Faster, deadlier, and more unpredictable than any elder species had ever anticipated. And now, the Dominion was paying the price. "Admiral!" another officer cried. "We're detecting multiple FTL signatures inbound. Human reinforcements!" Zelthorin turned sharply towards the holographic display. More Terran warships were emerging from hyperspace, larger, more advanced, each bristling with weaponry that shouldn't have been possible for a species this young. Humanity hadn't just been building a fleet. They had been building an empire, and now they were here to claim their victory. A transmission request came through. The comms officer hesitated before looking at Zelthorin. "It's them." Zelthorin exhaled, steeling himself before nodding. "Put them through." The hologram flickered to life, revealing Jason Reed standing tall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Admiral Vasquez leaned against the command table, looking almost bored. "Zelthorin," Jason said, his voice calm, but edged with steel. "I'd ask if you're ready to surrender, but honestly, that ship has sailed." Zelthorin straightened, his pride warring with his survival instincts. "This war is not over," Jason smirked. "Oh, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet." He gestured to the battle behind him. "Your fleet is done. Your empire is next." Zelthorin's scales rippled in barely contained rage. "You think the Council will allow this?" Jason chuckled. "The Council? You mean the same Council that sat back and let you attack us? The same one that's terrified of what we've become?" He leaned forward. "We were the United Galactic Federation's greatest mistake. They kept us leashed, slowed us down, made sure we never got too powerful." His eyes darkened. "But then they threw us out. And now we're done playing by their rules." Zelthorin knew then. This wasn't just about the Dominion anymore. This was about humanity taking their place in the galaxy. No longer outcasts, no longer restricted. They were writing the new laws now, and the rest of the galaxy would have no choice but to follow. The war had ended. The Terran sovereignty had begun. The fall of the Zephyr Dominion was only the beginning. News of humanity's overwhelming victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Dominion, once an empire that had ruled through fear and brute force, was shattered. Their fleets lay in ruins, their warlords scrambling to secure what little power they had left. Some tried to flee, others attempted last-ditch resistance, but it didn't matter. Humanity had already won, and the galaxy was watching. Inside the United Galactic Federation's High Council chambers, panic gripped the elder races. The very species that had once voted to expel humanity now faced a terrifying reality. "They crushed the Dominion in a day," one counselor whispered, their many eyes wide with disbelief. "They are rewriting warfare itself," another hissed. "We have underestimated them for too long." At the head of the chamber, the Supreme Chancellor of the Council, a towering cephalopod-like being, raised a tendril. "Enough," it rumbled. "Humanity has overstepped. Their reckless expansion and disregard for order threaten us all." A silence fell. Everyone in the chamber understood what those words meant. They were preparing for war. But this time, the Council wouldn't just rely on one empire to fight their battle. They would unite all of them. Back on Earth, Jason Reed stood in the heart of the Terran Sovereignty headquarters, watching as holographic reports streamed in. Across former Dominion space, humanity wasn't just occupying planets. They were integrating them. Rebellious factions, long oppressed by the Dominion, welcomed human forces as liberators. Former Dominion warships, now under Terran control, were being repurposed into the growing sovereignty fleet. Humanity wasn't just expanding. They were building something new. Admiral Vasquez walked up beside him, arms crossed. "Council's pissed," she said, tossing a datapad onto the table. "They just declared us an unlawful rogue state." Jason smirked. "Let me guess. They're calling for collective action against the human threat?" Vasquez nodded. "They're gathering a coalition. The Council is scared, Jason. They know they can't control us anymore, so they're about to throw everything they have at us." Jason exhaled, glancing at the map of the galaxy. The Council had every advantage: numbers, resources, alliances forged over millennia. On paper, humanity was still outmatched, but they weren't fighting on paper. He turned to the gathered military leaders. They think we're reckless, unstable, that we're going to lash out first. General Carter scoffed. They clearly don't know us. Jason nodded. Exactly. We're not going to start this war. They are, and when they do? He leaned forward, his voice quiet but firm. We finish it. As the Galactic Federation mobilized its Grand Alliance, they didn't realize the truth. They weren't fighting an upstart species anymore. They were fighting the architects of a new galactic order. And humanity? Humanity had been waiting for this moment all along. The war began not with a declaration, but with an execution. A human diplomat, sent to negotiate a peaceful resolution with the Galactic Council, was arrested upon arrival. Within hours, a public broadcast aired across the galaxy, an image of the diplomat kneeling before the Council's high tribunal, their hands bound, their face bloodied. Then, the sentence was carried out. A plasma blade swung down, and humanity had its answer. The response was immediate. On Luna, inside the war room of Terran Sovereignty Headquarters, Jason Reed watched the execution replay in silence. Around him, the highest-ranking officials of humanity stood, their expressions grim. Admiral Vasquez exhaled slowly. Well, I guess we're past negotiations. Jason's jaw tightened. He had expected war. He had even welcomed the challenge. But this? This wasn't just a strategic move. This was a message. The Council hadn't simply declared war. They had made it personal. He turned to General Carter. How long until the fleet is ready? Carter didn't hesitate. We can deploy within 48 hours. Jason nodded. Then let's make something clear. His voice was cold. Final. The Council wanted to show the galaxy what happens to those who defy them. He gestured to the holographic display, where the execution still played on loop. Now we show them what happens when you provoke humanity. The first strike came at the edges of Council space. Terran warships, sleek and bristling with weapons the Council had deemed too dangerous centuries ago, emerged from slip space without warning. The enemy's fleets, built for control, not survival, were caught unprepared. Their defensive lines collapsed in minutes. Their colonies, used to Federation peacekeeping, surrendered before the first shots were even fired. But humanity wasn't here to occupy. They were here to burn the old order to the ground. Council shipyards were reduced to floating wreckage. Military outposts were turned into lifeless husks. Every strategic stronghold, every carefully placed defensive barrier, shattered. And the most terrifying part? The Council had no idea where humanity would strike next, because humanity wasn't following any pattern the elder species understood. They weren't following rules. On the Council's homeworld, panic reigned. The Supreme Chancellor stood in the Grand War Chamber, surrounded by trembling advisors. They are unpredictable, one of the generals admitted. They do not fight like the Dominion. They do not fight like anyone we have faced before. The Chancellor's tendrils coiled in frustration. Then what do they want? Silence. No one had an answer. Because for the first time in history, the Council was fighting an enemy that wasn't seeking land, resources, or status. Humanity didn't want concessions. They wanted justice, and they wouldn't stop until the Council was nothing but dust. Back on Earth, Jason Reed watched as the first phase of the war unfolded exactly as planned. His fleet commanders sent in their latest reports. One by one, the Council's defenses were collapsing. But Jason knew this was just the beginning. He turned to Vasquez. Tell me when we have a clear path. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. A clear path to where? Jason's expression was ice. To their homeworld. Because this wasn't just war. This was retribution. The war reached its final stage faster than anyone had predicted. The Council, once the unshakable authority of the galaxy, was now a fractured remnant of its former self. Entire fleets had been annihilated, their supply lines cut, their worlds abandoned. The carefully constructed illusion of their invincibility had been shattered by a species they had once dismissed as reckless and insignificant. And now, humanity stood at their doorstep. The skies above the Council homeworld burned. Terran warships descended like falling gods, their weapons raining destruction upon the last of the Council's defenses. Plasma turrets fired desperately from planetary fortresses, but they were no match for the AI-assisted precision of human war machines. Elite Council strike teams attempted one final stand at the capital's gates, only to be met by cybernetically enhanced human soldiers, faster and deadlier than anything they had faced before. Inside the grand chambers of the Council, Supreme Chancellor Valzorith watched as the doors to the war room were blasted open. Jason Reed stepped inside, his uniform battle-worn, his eyes cold and unyielding. Behind him, Admiral Vasquez and a team of Terran operatives spread through the chamber, weapons ready. The Chancellor, battered and desperate, raised a trembling tendril. "Please," he rasped. "There must be another way." Jason didn't blink. There was. He stepped forward. "You killed it." The execution of humanity's diplomat had sealed their fate. The war could have been avoided. A balance could have been struck. But the Council had made a choice. And now, humanity was making theirs. Jason's voice was like a final verdict. "The United Galactic Federation is over." Vasquez lifted her rifle. "So is your rule." A single shot echoed through the chamber, and with that, the old order fell. The aftermath reshaped the galaxy. With the Council dismantled, humanity didn't take its place. They erased it. No more centralized power, no more bureaucratic oppression disguised as diplomacy. The old empires that had once relied on the Council's authority now had two choices: adapt to the new system of independence, or fade into irrelevance. Former Dominion colonies, long subjugated, were finally free. Merchant guilds and smaller factions, once at the mercy of Council regulations, now thrived under a new, unrestricted economy. The balance of power had shifted permanently. And at the heart of it all, humanity stood as the architects of this new era. They hadn't conquered. They had liberated. But every species in the galaxy knew one undeniable truth. Humanity had been held back for too long. Now, they owned the future.